Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Witches Movie Coven. We would like to say thank you to Patty and Jason, who are not here. They are off being busy and fabulous and doing wonderful witch things, and I'm sure we'll hear all about it next week. But we have some beautiful ladies here, some that I met in person, one that I have yet to meet in person. Heather, I'm talking to you. I will meet Heather in person, but I'll start with you. Heather, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm here looking forward to a show. You don't look like Patty, but you are playing Patty tonight, and you're doing a spectacular job starting out. I am. If you're not used to watching the show, I'm Heather Greene. I'm a film historian and a witch, and I wrote the book Lights, Camera, Witchcraft, all things witches and movies. So I'm looking forward to talking about, there's my book. I'm looking forward to talking about our movie tonight.
And speaking of things that you have done, I got this lovely little gift in the mail. Can you see? I love this little thing. Can you tell us about this lovely little thing?
Sure, I can. Well, I don't have my phone with me to demonstrate, unless you have your phone to demonstrate.
I have my phone right here.
Oh, there you go. So it is a phone holder specifically designed for the witch person, the witchy person, or someone who likes pentacles, and it's great for the desk, and it's also great for travel because it comes apart and you can take it everywhere. That way you're not holding it constantly or leaning up against books. So this is our little design on the Bewitched home, where we make gifts and home decor for the discerning witch.
Yep, and you should definitely check it out, as well as all of her books. If you are interested in anything that is film related, anything that is witchy, Heather Greene is a fount of knowledge. I am always astounded at the amount of research that you do. And then you're welcome, of course. And then we go to Ms. Courtney Buckley. Hello, Ms. Courtney Buckley.
That's me. Hi, how are you?
I am well. How are you?
Listen, long time no see.
I know, it feels like it was 20 years.
I know. In reality, it was several days. I got to finally meet you in person. In the middle of the night, I might add.
It was the middle of the night, which is the scariest time to meet me. Is in the middle.
I was coming off the scariest part of my road trip adventure, where I drove through white-knuckled and screaming Times Square in the middle of the night, and in a rental car nonetheless, so I couldn't run people over. And it was terrifying.
Now, what was scarier, Times Square or the Villisca Axe murder house?
Listen, that's really a tough one. I'm going to say the fact that I still have yet to sleep with the lights off or without nightmares. I'm going to have to go with Villisca, but just by a hair. And I don't know if you guys can see the awesome shirt that I'm wearing, but the Axe Ham of Villisca shirts have come in.
Now, there is a story behind that. For those of you who have not seen Scared and Alone, Ms. Courtney Buckley, why don't you tell us what that represents?
Well, so at the Villisca Axe murder house, obviously this terrible, terrible crime took place. The killer, after killing all these people, sat in the kitchen, made a meal. There was a side of bacon out that he seemed like he was going to make a meal with. So when we went to do Scared and Alone, I went and, I was going to replicate this final meal at the table towards the end of the show. And I got ham because you can't eat raw bacon. So I got the ham and I put it in a bag and I forgot it. And then, I got all set up in the house, went back out, got the food, brought it back in the house. Chaos ensued. If you haven't seen the episode, watch it. But then at the end, I go to set up to eat this ham and the ham is gone. And I had been not myself. You'll have to watch and see. I had been not myself. And so I was very angry about everything, but I was irate about the ham and I would not let go of the fact that the ham was gone. So on the back of my shirt, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. It's my famous quote of the night, which is, "Where's my ham?" So you can order these delightful shirts on mysterycontrol.com. It says the Axe Ham of Villisca, and that's how we commemorate that, trauma that we all went through. So
it was definitely trauma, but then you got to come and you got to see me in the middle of the night, and then we talked about the other painting that is there, because after the Axe murder house, she went to the Allegheny prison jail thing?
Yeah, it was the Allegan County Historical Society and Old Jail Museum, and you painted the creature of my nightmares without even knowing that it was there. That would be this friend right here. Its eyeballs. There was this dummy in the solitary confinement cell, and it was wearing a horrific mask, and it had like glass eyes, and one eye was looking at me, and one eye was like flipped underneath. And they made me go in the cell with this horrible dummy, and I'm sitting there looking at the dummy, looking at the painting on my little teeny phone screen, and I was like, "Wait a minute, this is what you're painting?" And then we all came to the realization it was terrible, and now it lives in my house because your painting is beautiful and I love it.
Well, I love you too, and it was so good to see you and meet
Yes.
you. And I'll see you next week too. Right? I mean, no,
Yes.
like this week.
Like tomorrow, I think.
Tomorrow. It's tomorrow. So I got a double portion of Courtney. And speaking of double portions and being bosom buddies, I'm going to introduce you my very dear friend, Ms. Brandi Graber. Brandi is one of my longest friends. I won't say she's my oldest friend, but Ms. Brandi is one of my longest friendships. And we'll talk a little bit about some of what she's doing and some of the things that she has done. But I would be remiss if I did not share this very special to me story. So one of my favorite stories about Brandi is that I was young. We were doing Lost in Yonkers together, which is a play. And instead of preparing myself mentally to go on stage, I was 12 or 13 and I was very, very gay, and I was questioning and trying to figure out who I was. And this image popped in my head of me in the future, sitting in my throne chair, which I'm not sitting in now, but sitting in my throne chair with a suit. And I went, oh, no. Oh, that's so gay. That's very gay. That people are going to think that's really gay. So I reconjured up this image in my mind, and it was the 90s. And I thought, what do men wear? Oh, yes, they wear flannels and they wear holy jeans and they wear beanie caps. It's the 90s, by the way, right? So I hear Brandi's very distinct cadence in my head, and she says, well, I really liked the first one better, but I just want you to be happy, but I really liked the first one better. And I thought, how can she? And I turn around and there is my friend looking at me with this sweet smile, like she was knowing. And so I went, oh shit, she can hear me. Pardon. Oh crap. She can hear me. Crap, she can hear me. And she says, I went brick wall. And then years later, I asked Ms. Brandi, I said, Brandi, remember when we did Lost in Yonkers and I was getting ready to go on stage, and then I retold the story, and I said, and then you comforted me and you thought these words, and Brandi said, well, you think very loudly, and I love you.
It's true.
So that was where I met Brandi. Now, Brandi, you have been a makeup artist. You did X-Files, and you did. You also, part of the reason that I wanted you here tonight is because you also, for a while, impersonated Elvira.
I did, and that was in the 90s as well. Yes, for Coors, when she was representing Coors beer.
And so, and then you did makeup for X-Files, and Austin Powers, and maybe a few other things.
Georgia the Jungle and Jurassic Park 2.
Can I tell a very personal story about Austin Powers?
Yes.
So, well, actually, maybe you tell it better. But it was she. Remember the fembots? That's the story I'm telling you. So you tell that story, Brandi.
Well, we had cast a woman's chest for the fembots, but for whatever reason, the director didn't like them, and so he looked at me and said, "I want those." And cast my chest instead. So my chest it's the fembots when the guns come out and start shooting.
I am starstruck right now. Not only Jurassic Park 2, but the boobs from Austin Powers.
That's
Like, I
right.
cannot. I'm gonna need a minute.
And also, Brandi is a witch. Brandi, you are now doing with what is the name of your shop?
Spellbound Boutique in
Spellbound
Carthage, Missouri.
Carthage. And now, because you are a witch, do you do readings there? Do you do spells there? What else do you do in the shop?
Yes, we make mojo bags, and I teach tarot classes, and I'm teaching a Magic 101 class right now.
Fabulous. And speaking of magic, maybe it's time we start talking about the reason that we're all here. Elvira. Something.
Hearts on fire. Hey. That's a different Elvira.
Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Heather, I will start with you. Since you are the witch historian on movies, let's start with you. Tell us what you know about Elvira.
Well, I don't have, Elvira was around and popular when I was young. And so I personally was not focused on her. I don't know too much about her particularly, and she's fantastic. Everything I do know is she is fantastic. But what's interesting about this particular movie, Elvira, Mistress of Dark, is it came out in 1988. And that's how I always start whenever I give you this little historical tidbit, is where it lands in movie history for witch movies. And so it's 1988. So we go back all the way to that period of time. This is the very beginning of the second wave of popularity of witch movies. It begins around 1987, 1988, and then it goes until the late 90s. And so this second wave is caused by the satanic panic, which I've spoken a lot about on this show. It's that fear of satanic ritual abuse of children, witchcraft stuff. So the interest in witch films at this period of time is very different from the 1970s, very different from the witch wave we just went through. This was a time when people were afraid of witches, but or satanic stuff. So you had a lot of things. 1987, 1988, think Witches of Eastwick. Okay. So what's interesting is, though, at the same time as you had some of these horror movies start to spin up, witchcraft and occult related movies really start to get popular, you also had comedy. Okay. And so what happens is Elvira's movie comes out right at this time and becomes popular part of these comedy witchcraft movies. And there's a bunch of different ones, but specifically sex-based comedies. I call them those sex witch comedies. So another example of this, which I recommend watching, is Love at Stake, which has a very similar type of what I call them vamp witches. It's definitely a trope for the type of witches. And Elvira is most definitely a vamp witch. So she is, Love at Stake has one played by Barbara Carrera. She plays a witch called Faith Stewart. Similar, very Elvira, give you very much Elvira vibes. You also have a movie called Four Rooms. So fun to watch if you want to watch Four Rooms. The witch part of it is only the first segment of the movie. Madonna is actually in that one. And it's really kind of a fun, again, these are what I call sex comedies. It's definitely involves witchcraft in terms of these vamp witches, these sexy witches. It usually is a vamp witch that's trying to trick men or seduce men or, something like that. Again, it's the Elvira feel. So she had influenced these films. I think by this point, her persona was definitely influential in these movies that came along. So that's where this movie fits in. And it's definitely a fun, campy, and it showcases what Cassandra does perfectly. So that's where this movie fits into witchcraft film history.
And I have to say, I really was so excited after we watched Carrie last week we watched Carrie?
Mm-hmm.
After we watched Carrie, my mind automatically went to Elvira because she says, oh, I've got this scene where I ripped it off. I mean, I borrowed it from Flashdance, and I'm going to pull this bucket and all of this glitter is going to pour down over my body. But like Carrie, the bucket is not what in Carrie, she's not expecting it at all. But in Elvira, she gets tar and feathered. And so that whole scene when she's poured and she's in that theater and she's covered in this tar, it was an instant flashback to Carrie.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting for me, and I'll just say, is that the two movies are 10 years apart. So you can see how crazy and how different we changed and movies were changing as far as the display of witchcraft, because you had that evil kind of satanic or natural witchcraft of the 70s and those teen witches of the 70s, and that peters out, and by the early 80s you wind up with just kind of fantasy stuff going on, and then it goes back up to all the way we wind up with, Elvira this movie is one of the ones that introduces the witch movies back in, and here we go we're back at the forefront, the witches. So it's interesting. But anyway, someone else.
Since we are on the topic of witchcraft in Elvira, I want to address Brandi. You happen to love Elvira with good reason. I love Elvira. In the witchcraft realm, what stands out to you in the world of Elvira and witchcraft?
Well, that her mother was a witch. And then obviously her uncle was a warlock or a sorcerer of some sort. So that stands out to me the most. And that did it skip Elvira? Did it skip herself? Because she says, "Oh, I can't get my ring to work," at one point in the movie. So I'm very interested in her mother as the witch. My mother was a witch, so that interests me.
That's a very good point. Courtney, how about you? What in witchcraft in Elvira stands out to you?
I think the scene for me was when it was the cookbook, the recipe book, and she cooks the casserole, and then they go to eat it, and then it comes alive. And I was like, up until then, honestly, this was my first time watching this movie tonight, and I knew who Elvira was. Like, I knew what she looked like. I didn't know anything about her. I had never seen the movie, and up until then, I was like, okay, so this is a movie about her boobs, basically.
Yes.
I was like, I don't really understand why we're watching this. Like, once again, I'm in this mode of like, am I watching the wrong movie again? Like, I don't know what's going on. And then the thing comes out of the casserole, and I was like, there it is. And then it was on from there.
Well, for me, there's a lot of magic in this film, and there's on a personal level, my sister, who has always been very sort of evangelical, very Christian, very she was obsessed with Elvira, obsessed. And she said that one day when she goes to heaven, she wants to look like the combination of Dolly Parton and Elvira. And I even as a kid, she had these comic books, and I was so fascinated by the Mistress of the Dark. So there's a little bit of that magic, but then in a very real, personal, real world magic, and being someone who is slightly macabre, someone who is also kind of sexual, maybe who am I kidding? I'm a lot more than kind of, but anyway, she goes into this small town, and the way that she is, I want to say received, but that's not the word. She was not received. Yeah. And it was a fight, even when she's driving from, she's dealing with the man who buys the station, who only sees her as a nympho. And he makes very lewd comments about her, and she just wants to be left alone. And then she goes to Falwell, Massachusetts, and of course Falwell we know is Jerry Falwell, and the moral majority. And so for me, the magic is palpable in a very real case.
Mm-hmm. Can I just say, I feel like I've been on a streak lately of not enjoying the movies that we've watched. I've not been on the Wands Up team. So going into this, seeing that first scene with I had no idea what was happening because again, I didn't know anything about her. And I'm sitting there like, okay, what is this? Like, here we go again. Like, can I just make it through one? Like, can I be a positive person? Maybe. But then the literal minute she started talking, I was like, okay, I know what I want to be when I grow up. I loved it. Like, so this is I took notes on all my favorite parts.
Do you have quotes?
I do.
Can you give us a quote?
Yep. The first quote, the one that made me get up and get my pen and my paper, was when the guy said, "Hey, baby, I've got something to show you." And she looks him dead in his eye and says, "Sorry, left my magnifying glass at home." And then the next one was, "There's nothing wrong with G-rated movies as long as there's sex and violence." And I was like, you know what? I feel that. But like from the minute, like again, it happened very quickly. Within like 3 minutes, I was calling everyone I know to be like, put this movie on right now. Like, you don't understand. Because for me, it was in the very beginning when like the news thing comes down on her and she's like getting up and trying to move around, and then they're like being jerks to her and she knocks the guy over into the news desk. But the lady with the big hair, I can't even talk about it. The lady with the big hair, her wig falls off. I thought I was gonna have a stroke. Like, it was so funny.
That's the beauty. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Courtney.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's the beauty of this. And first of all, her character and the way she portrays it. These are not supposed to be serious witches, and she's mocking a lot of what's going on at the time. She's at the same time playing or on the surface, she looks like a woman who is falling into a stereotype, an objectified character. But the way she plays it so wry, it's like this subtle beauty that you go, okay, she's really impaired. She just really, there's a subtext to her, similar to the subtext to other witches we've talked about, where she's just like, and it makes it so funny and it's perfect. And that's what you find with a lot of these sex comedies. They're mocking aspects of what's going on. They're not really about witchcraft as we know it as modern witches. They're not taking it that seriously, but they're using it because society was also mocking it, or society was taking it too seriously. So they're mocking witchcraft. They're mocking society, and she's mocking society in a way, and so you look at her film, and then these other ones, Love at Stake and Four Rooms and these stuff, and there really is this I don't know what to say, sophisticated it's a sophisticated underlay of mocking that goes on of what's going on in society that Cassandra captures with her character so well with Elvira. So that I enjoy. I do, you have to just grin and go, okay, yeah, I get what you're doing.
Like, this movie is entirely my sense of humor. Like, I was wheezing the whole time and screaming, oh my God. Like, I can't, when they did the reading of the will or whatever they were doing, and she was jumping up and down, and she's like, tell me, what did I get? And the guy who's reading the will is sitting perfectly still, but he's like out of breath. Like,
It's sophisticated silliness. That's the word. It's sophisticated silliness in there that she weaves in. I mean, it's just like, yeah.
And the fact that like horrifying lady's name was Miss Chastity Pariah. Like,
that was exactly what I was about to say.
Yes.
Is that she's my favorite side character, and I love how that she says, let's not call names. She's a woman of what does she say? She goes on to say she's a purveyor of pulchritude.
But can we talk about the morality club picnic? Because I think that's my favorite scene in any movie ever. Because first I noticed the sign in the back and I was like, oh, okay. And then she brought the casserole and I was like, here we go. Like, the thing's gonna, like, they had me totally exactly where they wanted me throughout this entire scene. And then the slow realization as they're like, and I was like, it's gonna happen. And whenever the dude, he was like, he picked up the sausage and he's like, remind you of anything? And then she holds up the taco shell. They're at a picnic and she's got a taco shell and she's like, remind you of anything? I lost my mind. I
That's
lost
perfect.
my mind. It was so good. Oh, and then
That's
when they told Miss Chastity Pariah that she could have worn out a mechanical bull. Like, I can't.
And that's what I
Oh.
imagine people like that are like in their home life. And they're, wagging their fingers at everybody in public, but in their real life.
There is something to that, Brandi. And even now, the number one thing that the GOP is obsessed with right now is the bits of other people, the private bits. So it's like one is obsessed over something for so long, you begin to wonder, why are you obsessed over this?
Exactly.
And getting back to the idea of this, the subtleties of this film, they chose Massachusetts on purpose. Again, you wind up with, and I talk about this in my book throughout, is Salem, from the beginning. Salem captivates the American audiences from the beginning of Hollywood film. There's the most amount of Salem-based or Salem-inspired films were actually in the silent era. But Salem becomes not only stories about Salem like at the beginning, but it becomes a cue for witch films. And so you have a ton of witch films, especially in this beginning part of this, in the early 80s, that are set in small town New England or Massachusetts. And those are subtle or not so subtle cues for the Salem story to cue the audience. So you have that set up right now. You have Elvira, you have Massachusetts, small town. And that not only sets up the Salem, what that sets up is exactly what you guys are talking about. This sort of battle between hyper conservative culture and all of these things with the bits and all that versus Elvira, who's challenging everything everywhere in all directions. And so you have that set up just with the idea that this is set in Falwell, Massachusetts. I mean, that's a perfect, they did that beautifully. That's a nice piece right there.
There is something, though, even though we know where it takes place, we know that it's in Salem, we know that it's Massachusetts, we know that it's on the East Coast. The movie buff in me, every time they saw the town, I could not help but see Back to the Future. I just could not.
Small town.
But it was filmed on the same backlot.
Oh, okay.
So it is a small town, but even the movie theater where they're showing how to do duck calls, and then Chastity Pariah finds out, anyway. So that was the same movie theater that the DeLorean crashed in Back to the Future.
Mm-hmm. Small town America, small town America. Hollywood doesn't care. It's all the same. Small town America.
And they also do, they reference, the Salem Charter, that was written way back in the day, too, that, this is how they're going to prosecute Elvira is because of this ancient charter from the days of the Salem witch trials, which is ridiculous because then they're building up these, pyres to burn her at the stake, and that's not what happened. But, I mean, to me, it tickles me because it's so outlandish and ridiculous that it just fits right in.
Mm-hmm.
And don't you find it funny that her uncle, who is clearly a practicing magician, sorcerer, wizard, he's the one that brings that law to the forefront. He's the one that stirs up the extremists on the right who says, oh, well, we can get rid of her with this law because she is, and this is what's happening, and she is taking away from you.
Mm-hmm.
He's a witch himself.
Mm-hmm.
I just find that even in a more modern parallel, even that to be astounding.
My favorite thing... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Courtney.
I was just going to say real quick, my favorite thing about him is when her shoe went in his head, and then he said, he did this stupid thing, and he, rips it out, and he's got, the bleeding hole, and he's like, oh, that hurts.
I love when she has her ring on her finger and she says, take that, and the ring goes off of her finger and it goes onto his. And that, for me, you have to be very careful in witchcraft. You have to be very careful what you ask for. She was trying to say, I want the ring to do something to you, but she said, take that with the ring. So when you are practicing witchcraft, be very, very careful what you say, because the universe, the energies, the gods, the goddesses, whatever it is that you are, whatever your practice is, they don't care. They will do what you say. So you have to be very careful when you are conducting magic.
That is absolutely true. Intent is everything, and words are just as words have to be clear. The universe must get it right, specific.
Yes.
That is
Words are
absolutely true.
wands. Yes.
Oh, I like that. Words are
love
wands. I like
that.
that. Words are wands.
We need that on a t-shirt.
Words are certainly wands. I love that. So
Yeah, they do have a lot of power. And you know, even getting back to the movie, the words having power, it was the written word of a 300-year-old law that sort of is the downpouring. And then what I find to be so peculiar is that they have her, they're about to burn her at the stake, and her beautiful white milky flesh is about to sizzle. I think that's a line
Yes.
there. And so then, of course, it's a 30-year-old film. If you haven't seen it, you know, spoiler alert. But so she gets her hands free, and she calls up to the heavens, and it begins to pour down all of this rain, and it puts out all of the smoke. And then instantly, these people who were out to kill her, it was the proverbial damper of nope. And I sometimes wish in my own world that a little bit of rain would just do the same thing. It would those people who leave tracts in my car or they get offended. They don't want to park by me because there's a devil on the dashboard. You know, I wish that there would be a little bit of rain that would maybe make them not be so uptight, I guess is the word.
Yeah, so encompassed in what you just talked about the movie are the two things that I wrote down on my list in capital letters, which would be number one, the priest who comes into the cell, and I don't, spoiler alert, whatever, but he comes into the cell and she's like, oh, finally, someone reasonable. And he's like, may the gods, and then he's like instantly like, I was like, what? It was so good. And then when she's on the stake and she's like going back in her memory, and then there's little baby Elvira, like I screamed out loud with her hair and the little makeup, and she's a little baby, like so good.
I think it's fascinating that, you know, to me is you know, this movie is not one that's going to be known like a Godfather or like one of the best American movies, but it has a character in it, Elvira, as a witch or as a female empowered figure character, as someone who is subversive to the mainstream. And in this movie, she is hitting against a major trend that was happening in society, which I talked about, the Satanic Panic. That was iconic. I mean, and what's amazing to me is that she is not, I think the younger generations right now don't really know who she is. She is not lasting the way the witches of, let's say, Hocus Pocus have. People know who they are. She isn't lasting the way some of, like, the Wicked Witch of the West, some of these other witches. She doesn't have that same, and that's fascinating, because if you really dive into the work she did and you pay attention, yes, it's silly, yes, it's campy, but she was using comedy really to hit hard against some of the stuff that was going on, and she's like iconic. There's nothing like Elvira, and even I wasn't a fan. I mean, I wasn't a fan. I wasn't against her at the time. I just wasn't paying attention because I was, younger, but now looking back and doing research, she's an icon that in terms of witch films and in terms of just American culture, she's amazing.
And I'm sorry.
No, that's it. That's all. I'm just singing her praises.
For me, again, I talked about at the top of the hour, my sister who was so evangelical and was so obsessed with Elvira. And yet my sister is a wonderful person, but my sister would find satanic imagery in everything from a 19th century lithograph I had on my wall to a wind chime that I had because it looked like the devil. I mean, but she was so obsessed with Elvira, and the imagery is blatant. She has an inverted pentagram on her steering wheel. She is clearly mistress of the dark. What do you want? She's
right. But go ahead. Sorry.
No, go on.
No, I was going to say, I think she captured an 80s type of witchcraft, a representation that doesn't resonate now. I think it's a combination of her being very buxom, which does not happen in movies now with strong women. And I think also she almost is seen as mocking witchcraft to a degree, because I think I'm just thinking out loud in terms of why her popularity, why she doesn't hold the same popularity as some of these other witch icons that we know of and love. And I think that's maybe part of it. But, if you look closely again at what she was doing, she was actually very aggressively subverting the patriarchy. She was pushing against stuff, even if she was using a macabre and a witchcraft aesthetic and not really embracing it. She was doing it, and it's pretty cool. So,
well, I think also too, like, as a person who, you can't tell by looking at me now, but used to be young with long hair and skinny and buxom myself, where no matter what I wore, it was a problem. Walking down the street, it was, I was harassed every single day. So watching her, it was like, it almost healed my inner teenager a little bit to watch this now, because she just shuts everybody down in like the best way, or uses it to her advantage, like to service her. So watching that, it made me feel more empowered, like, I mean, back in time, but like more empowered in that way. And I think she's so relatable. But like, again, like you were just saying, Heather, I was born in 86. I wonder why I didn't, watch that growing up, because it was relatively around, the time that I was younger. But I never until today had any idea who she was or who she stood for. And like, what a rock star.
Yeah, she's a rock star.
Yeah, when I was 12, that's when she first came on the scene. And I was this little witch girl growing up that had been picked on in a small town. And when I first saw her, and she's so sassy and smart and beautiful, I thought, that is what I want to be. I want to be that.
And I had that thought today.
Excuse me.
And you did that.
And I did that, yes. I grew up to be her. And I still think of her in situations even now, what would she say? What would she do? In my little small town, she's still a big deal. Everybody still knows her, who she is, and thinks she's just the bee's knees.
I think there is something too about, though, the being in the satanic panic. I grew up, as you well know, I grew up in the evangelical movement, and it was the mid 80s. I got to celebrate Halloween one time. I was 5. I got to celebrate Halloween one time, and then the satanic panic came out, and it was the devil's birthday, and the witches, they eat children, and they sacrifice your black cats to the devil. And I couldn't even watch the Smurfs. And my sister, who loved Elvira but was so caught up in the satanic panic, would not even, she even told me that He-Man, the evil that was He-Man, was going to rub off on me. Now as an adult, I go, wait a minute. And there was, of course, we've got the Reaganomics in the 80s, and it was a lot. And there are a lot of parallels that are sort of even in a more contemporary world. And I think, being in the Midwest, there is still a lot of those parallels. I think the Satanic Panic never went away in the middle of the country.
To a
No,
degree.
it's still strong, sadly.
The original panic died legally by the end of the 90s, and we had a dip, but aspects of it remained. Absolutely. I mean, aspects of the concepts remained. The evangelical and fundamentalist movement that fueled the original Satanic Panic, most certainly. And you know what? That was actually fueled by something that threads that had existed since, I mean, you could trace it from Salem and the threads of this fundamentalism, that these beliefs, they're core and underlying in our culture. And so they rear their ugly heads at periods of time. And so we're seeing that now again, of course. I'm about to write another article on this. Actually, I'm researching it. So, and I've written several articles on that, which you can find links to on my website if you're interested in learning more about the Satanic Panic and how that played out in the 80s. But with Elvira, I think what's interesting about this and movies like Mistress of the Dark, like I keep mentioning Love at Stake and Four Rooms, and if you like silly, this type of comedy for witches of this period of time, you must go see these two other movies because they're a riot. And they also push against, in a way, the Satanic Panic in the way horror and drama were not doing. So if you're looking at things like Hocus Pocus or The Witches or Witches of Eastwick, these other movies that came out at the same time during this late 80s and early 90s, these movies were playing into the fear. You know, Hocus Pocus is about witches eating children. This movie scared children. You talk about Witches of Eastwick, again, devil worship, and you have a series of them. Love at Stake, similarly set in a Salem type town, really is mocking the moral panic. She's mocking moral panic, Elvira, and that's why this is impressive. And comedy sometimes, and this was said about Bewitched, comedy sometimes is one of the best ways to make cultural and social statements without being obvious. And so you see that in Love at Stake, silly films that nobody will ever remember, but if you watch them, you'll see that thread. And again, these are what I call sex comedies. So you watch that one. In Four Rooms, there's a lot of magic in Four Rooms. Again, Madonna's in that one, which, you know, of course, I was like, I got to watch that one. Oh, Madonna as a witch? What? So,
I mean, I think she is.
Well, you know, you can, this is, yeah, there's Love at Stake. It's hysterical. And
are these on our list to cover?
We can cover them if you want.
I feel like I if it's in the vein of Elvira, I'm in, because
Love at Stake is Four Rooms is only the very first segment of it. It's a series of, I think, 4 episodes, and the witch one is the very first one. It's called The Missing Ingredient, and they're doing a spell to resurrect or to call down and invoke Diana, I believe, the goddess. And one of the witches forgets the ingredient, which happens to be semen. So then she has to go out and get the bellhop and procure the ingredient for the rest of the spell. It's like a 15-minute segment. So like I said, this is in the vein of the Elvira movie. There's like several of them.
I'm literally looking at where I can watch it when we get off of here. Right?
Love at Stake.
No, Pluto. It's on Pluto.
Okay.
Four Rooms is on Pluto.
So these are fun light comedies that use witchcraft at this period of time. That, again, Four Rooms not so much, but Love at Stake and Elvira, they push against the Satanic Panic, which is notable for this period of time. You know, I don't remember the Satanic Panic very closely, but this is when I personally got very interested in witchcraft. So I'm sure the Satanic Panic led to my awareness of the practice of witchcraft. And, you know, I did at one point go legend tripping, and I will admit that we went to this place in New Jersey and drove around backwards 3 times at midnight trying to see if we could get the devil to rise up in the middle of the upside down cross tower.
And did you?
as soon as we drove around the third time backwards in the dark without lights, we got out of there so quick we didn't look back to find out if we had done it. So, but it's called Devil's Tower in New Jersey. It's in Alpine, New Jersey. It's a famous site that has all kinds of lore and lots of teenagers trying to legend trip that it's really an upside down cross and you got to go drive around at midnight 3 times. But anyway, it's still there. But I don't know if we did or not.
I was probably driving through that when I learned that I had to drive through Times Square.
You know, maybe. Did you wave? Hey, I know who brought you back.
That was what I was saying.
Anyway, go ahead.
I was going to say in the Midwest, there's the spook light.
Yes, we have the spook light. And if you drive down this certain road, the Devil's Promenade, I think they call it now, you will see the spook light. It'll come down the road at you.
Wow.
That sounds suspiciously like a UFO, and I'm out. I don't want anything to do with that.
During the 80s and 90s, from what I understand, it would because of the Satanic Panic. I don't know, it's not my area, but legend tripping for teenagers was a huge thing. So people would try to do, spook lights and going to cemeteries to do certain things you had to do is huge. You'd find it, and that's really what eventually led to, or was the background behind the Blair Witch Project. Was a legend tripping thing. So it was a big thing in the 80s and 90s. I think the Satanic Panic was part of that too. So we did it.
we had it when I was like a teenager in the 2000s too. Like it was like a local legend with the the seminary, and the nuns Satan worshipped and killed a bunch of kids or something. So the tree glows red, and if you drive past this like scary dirt road, and you'll see the tree glow because it's an active seminary. So like sometimes nuns are actually walking down the street, and then we try not to crash into them because we're terrified. And you see the red glowing light, which is really an exit sign, but like everyone gets too spooked and like tries to drive away real fast because the devil's coming. Like that was still heavy in the 2000s.
Yeah.
I did a video a couple of years ago, an hour outside of Los Angeles, up on this mountain. It's called Satan's Castle. And the funny thing is, I'm going to tell you, now there was a whole Satanic Panic thing. They said that there were priests and nuns who were trying to take children from this tower to the nursing. It was, I don't know, some weird convoluted story. And they said that the devil built the tower in the middle of the night and all this crazy lore. But I will tell you, I drove my car, Mr. Satan. I drove it up the mountaintop. I dealt with my my fear of heights. I had to breathe. But I got up there and my video started acting up. My fellows here, their voices were manipulated. They sounded like they were actual devils. So, that maybe there is something to these things, and maybe they were enhanced by the Satanic Panic, much like Elvira was enhanced, pushing back on the Satanic.
Absolutely.
Can I sorry.
No, go ahead, Courtney.
I was just going to say before we're getting close on time, but I have 3 more notes that I wrote down that I just wanted to revel in with you guys because I love them. When she threw the leeches at the guy that was trying to come on to her, and the leeches were squeaking, first of all. And then he was so afraid of the leeches that he fell back through the door. Like they're just leeches. But that to me was hysterical. And then at the end, the dog in the neck brace, I almost lost it. Because that dog was crazy. And I looked it up, and the dog was actually crazy in real life, supposedly. And it bit people's ankles. And that's the best thing that I've ever heard. But like wrapping the whole thing up, the ending to me, I was like, oh my God, like I'm so into it, and it's feeling really wholesome and like beautiful and like whatever. And then the guy puts his arm around his son and he says, he touched a part of my son that no one has ever touched before. And the son is like, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was just I worked hard on these, and because I wanted to share.
I mean, there are
with you guys.
So many one-liners that she has when they're trying to fix at the house so she can sell it. Sure, grab a tool and start a banging.
Yeah.
I
I
think that
literally every time I wrote something down, I'd miss 4 more things. So it was like because I was too busy writing. But yeah.
I think the one quote that was just came up about Elvira being very beautiful. She is, physically beautiful. She has a a very 80s look, definitely in her the way she's presented. She looks like a rock and roller. She fits in with the heavy metal promotional stuff that was going on in the 80s that was using witchcraft too. She fits into that whole aesthetic that was happening. But I really think what I like, and when we say is that she was very beautiful, I just think that that demeanor, that pushing back against the patriarchy, being who she is with no remorse, no regret, with no apologies, that to me is the most beautiful part about her. And that comes through in this stupid, silly little comedy, like I said, sophisticated comedy. And I just wanted to ask, I know we're getting close on time and we have to do all of our stuff, but Brandi, I would like to know from you, I'm curious, is what it was like impersonating her. Like, how did that make you feel? How did people react to you? I mean, did that change did that do something for you as a witch and as a person?
Oh, it was very empowering. And actually, I thought that people would treat me like a bimbo, but they didn't. They had respect for me. And so that really stuck with me. And as a witch, just wanting to be like her and like her mother Morgana. You know, I just wanted to be that empowered and not sorry for who I am. And I've really carried that with me, especially moving back to a small town and creating, witchcraft for now people who are coming here to learn, to not be sorry for who you are.
That's
I
awesome.
love that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I would guess that would be something that Elvira would like too.
Oh, yes. I've
To
met
hear.
her twice,
Oh,
and I've
wow.
told her how much, I love her and how much she's influenced my life. And she's just as sweet as you would think she is.
That's amazing. Thank you.
And we heard earlier that she was supposed to be Ginger from Gilligan's Island. I did not know that.
I could totally see that, though. Can't you just totally see
With the
that?
red hair.
Oh, yeah.
You know, what I think fascinating, I know we've got short on time. What I find fascinating is the transition from Morticia, 1938, Charles Adams, to Vampira, who sued Elvira, but now Numi was her name, I think. Vampira. She was asked to be Morticia. They were we're gonna do this show, and she said, no, I don't feel right about doing that to Charles. Let me sort of alter it and create my own, which is why the lawsuit against Cassandra as Elvira failed, because she was clearly borrowing off of Charles Adams, who was borrowing from other characters as well. So, just a little progression, make it your own, I think.
Yeah.
All right. We have just a few more minutes. So one's up, one's down. Are you ready? Everyone, you can vote at home. I want to see your wands. One's up, one's down. I'm gonna do my wand way up.
So I don't have a wand because mine's still packed, but I have a humorous.
I'm doing wands up because it's fun and campy. It's very few movies I give a wands down to. It's not a movie that it's my favorite movie Elvira. So it's a wands up just for Elvira and the campiness. Oh, yours is way up there, Courtney.
Yeah.
Crystal's up.
Yes, crystals.
Wands up.
Yes, that's one of my very favorite movies.
Wands up. Awesome. Everybody is wands up. That's good. That's really good. So I guess now we should go through and we should talk to everybody, see where you are, where we can find you. Let's start with Brandi, since we ended with you. Brandi, where can we find you?
You can find me at Brandi Graber on Instagram or at Spellbound Boutique Carthage. And I'm here in Carthage for everybody to come see and get a reading from.
I'm going to have to take another road trip, I feel like.
Yes.
Come
I'll
to
show you all
Atlanta.
the spooky parts.
Brandi is, again, she's very good. She is the one who reads my cards. So everyone who asks me where I get my cards read, Brandi reads my cards for me. Now let's go over to Courtney Buckley.
That's me.
That's you.
So you can find me on all the socials at the Femes. And you can watch me as Ghostbait on Scared and Alone, which is scaredandalone.com, or at Scared Alone Live on all the socials. You can go back and watch the most horrifying night of my life, which was the Villisca Axe Murder House, or the Allegan County Jail, and see where this painting was born from. And then stay tuned for maybe some new episodes coming. But yeah, that's it for now. I'm just trying to remember how to sleep with the lights off, and that's where I'm at.
And of course, Ms. Heather Greene, delightful to have you. Tell us where we can find you.
You can find me at my website, heathergreene.net. All my socials are linked there, as well as links to the articles. I am, which I didn't mention earlier, a journalist, and I focus on witchcraft and the occult. And I've had several articles, new ones out, and I'm working on another one. So you can always find updates to my articles there. I will also be I'm on the board for the event called Mystic South. It's in Atlanta. So it is all witchy, occult, a mystical, magical event, 3-day event in Atlanta in July. Come to Atlanta during the hot Atlanta in July. And I will be there. I will be doing a presentation on haunted dolls there. So you'll get to actually physically see some of my dolls. Courtney is going to be my guest.
Nope.
So you want to send out not a doll down to us?
for a hot Atlanta second, I was like, maybe I'll go. And then I remembered about that. And nope.
Well, you don't have to attend the haunted doll session, although it is going to be quite fabulous. And anyway, so so I'll be doing that, and of course, every day I get to work with wonderful authors. An editor for Llewellyn, so I get to see all the fabulous books that my authors are going to be coming out with over the next year. So you can also see that on my website, which ones I'm working on. So, and yes, and the Bewitched Home, which just came up, which I help coordinate some of the wonderful little witchy stuff that we have there. So, and come say hi, visit me, all the socials.
And then you can find me. Thank you, by the way. You can find me. I'm anywhere good gentlemen psychics are sold. So that's Instagram, Facebook, the YouTube, all of the medias of social. And I'm really easy to be found. And also I am teaching at University Magicus. So if you have wanted to learn about magic, if you've wanted to enhance your magical presence, come and join us at universitymagicus.com. Also, you can find me, like Courtney, on Scared and Alone, and we've got new episodes that are coming. Also, yes, just like that. And also, you can find me this week in Boston. I will be at SatanCon to help create the satanic panic.
Yes.
Anyway.
Richard-Lael, real quick. I couldn't find the actual post, but I got a notification earlier that people on my Nextdoor app, which, as everyone knows, is very dramatic, but something having to do with like how people were terrified that this was happening. And I tried to get it so I could screenshot it and send it to you, but I can't get it. I don't know where it went.
I am glad I did not take Mr. Satan, because he would have ended up like Elvira's Thunderbird.
Mm-hmm.
Careful, paint.
Brandi, it was such an honor to meet you, and thank you so much for being on with us.
Thank you, Brandi.
So much.
This
has been a blast.
But one more thing to do.
Uh-oh.
All witches like to cackle. Witches, excepting for Elvira. I don't remember Elvira cackling. Do you remember Elvira cackling?
No. She can, though. She likes to. It just wasn't part of the script.
It was not part of the script. Okay, well, part of our script is at the end of every single show, we cackle because we are witches, and we want you to cackle because you are witches. And at the count of 3, we are going to cackle. 3, 2, 1.